Beskrat, can you oil my joints? They're getting kind of rusty.
Yeah.
Oh, much better. Thanks, Beskrat. Wow! Welcome back to the Red Ones Go Fast, old Big Mek here. And that's right, in this video we are talking about rust and creaks and being old. Let's get into it! First of all, a very welcome to the channel to all of our non-orc players that are going to be checking this video out, because the stuff we're going to talk about right now applies to everything, and not just Warhammer 40,000, but all of your tabletop miniature war games, because they all, in one way or another, involve some form of metal and thus corrosion, and that is what we are covering in the video today. Now, I'm not talking about like technique so much. Everybody's got their own technique. I'm not talking about specific products. Everyone's got their own favorites. What I'm talking about is applying the correct corrosion to the correct metal, and that's what we're going to be diving into. Now, all that being said, this channel right here is all about your kit bashing, converting, and doing really awesome stuff with your models with a very heavy orc bent, as obviously here, but we do a little bit of everything, especially 40K. And this is just one of those things that crosses over into multiple areas. You are going to see a lot of corrosion on a lot of different armies. Not everybody has really nice, sparkling, clean Space Marine armor. A lot of people do try to dirty them up a little bit, whether they're Chaos Beakies or regular Beakies, as well as your Imperial Guard. You're going to be fighting in mud and dirt and snow or sand, and they're going to put different kinds of corrosion and weathering techniques on them. And what happens is you go to put your weathering technique on, and if you don't put the right type of weathering on the right type of metal, it looks off, and you're not quite able to put your finger on it, and that's what we're going to talk about. Now, we are known for being very practical around here, so I'm going to show you what corrosion is with this handy-dandy bottle of rear axle lubricant from, well, the 1960s. But what you've got here is a metal can of oil, okay? On the bottom here, this is nice, fresh metal. That is the way it looked when it was new. This was preserved because this was basically kind of suctioned to the thing it was sitting on, and it was not exposed to any water or oxygen for decades and decades. But that is what the metal looked like new. This metal right here is probably some form of a tin or something like that, but it's a nice, light, bright metal. Now, you want to see the top? That is rust. That is what decades of rust does. Now, again, this is actually in pretty good shape for its age, but you can see it is orange and it is spotted and it is pitted. And if you rub your finger on it, did you hear that difference? Did you catch that? Let me do it again for you. It's scratchy. It's like sandpaper. That's because if you actually look at this with your eyeballs nice and close, it is a surface. It has a texture to it, because what the rust is actually doing is physically attacking the metal. It is creating pits. The metal is, in a scientific term, on fire. That's literally what it is. It is oxidizing on fire. It just happens at a much slower rate, and yeah, that's what you get out of it. You can see here on this lip, the inside of the lip is starting to rust a very tiny little bit. Right there, you can see that nice texture just getting started in there inside that lip. So that is what real rust is in practicality. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. That doesn't look very rusty. It just looks brown. What's up with that? Well, that is because, again, it is kind of on fire. It is an oxidation. The more oxidized the metal is, the brighter the orange in the rust. And it goes from bright orange to like a medium red to a brick red to almost a black, believe it or not, depending on how active the corrosion is. You can actually treat rust and actually like kind of extinguish it, and it turns black, and it just kind of stays black unless it gets exposed again. Now, you're going to see this a lot in very humid areas, very salty areas, but basically, again, you are exposing the metal, the untreated metal, to a little bit of water from anywhere. It doesn't even have to actually be like wet. It could be the literal humidity in the air, and oxygen. Oxygen is the big thing. You are getting oxygen into the metal and oxidizing it. Now, that does mean that it's different between steel or tin and your other metals. This is a copper fork, and you can see it's fairly clean-ish on this end with a little bit of verdigris, but this end is absolutely mangled. And once again, look at the surface of it. It is completely actually 3D physically pitted from all that verdigris. So this is what copper and brass does. It verdigris. Now again, you can polish this. You can even polish this completely away and get back to a shiny surface, but the pitting will never go away. You'll actually notice that on like really old sailing ships and things like that that have brass fittings on them. They'll polish and polish and polish, but because they've had verdigris build up over the years, they will have pits, especially in these little kind of valleys and areas and whatnot. That's where it likes to start and collect, and that's where you get the pitting. But this is what that type of metal looks like. All right, but I'm not done yet, because you see there is a difference between what's called ferrous metal and non-ferrous metals. Basically, things like steel and iron are magnetic. They are ferrous. They rust. Things like aluminum are non-ferrous. They're non-magnetic. They don't rust. They oxidize. This is an alternator off of my speed buggy. And, well, the case here is made of aluminum. You can see that's decently fresh-ish aluminum. But this side, there is your oxidation. See this white, bumpy material? That is the layer of oxidation forming on the surface of the aluminum. Now, again, this is going to keep happening. If I don't treat this, this is going to grow and grow and grow around the entire structure and actually eat away at the aluminum. And yes, I can clean it off. I can get a wire brush or brass brush and clean it all off and even polish the aluminum, but it's never going to be the same. That surface is no longer smooth. It now has pits everywhere where this oxidation is, where it has been burning the aluminum. So aluminum, you need this white speckly stuff to really look like proper oxidation. Now the aluminum you'll often see wrong on like aircraft. So people will build an aircraft model for Warhammer 40K, for example, make it look like it has aluminum skin like a real airplane, and then they'll put orange rust on it. And it just doesn't look right, just doesn't work right. And I mean, think about it. Have you ever seen a rusty airplane? That's why, because they are aluminum, they're non-ferrous, they oxidize. Now, what does all this mean in miniature terms? Well, let's head on over to the workbench and take a look. All right, before we get over to the workbench, I actually want to plug my contest real quick. I am holding an heavy metal contest right now over on our Discord server, link down in the description below. By right now, I mean when this video was brand new, which is in the middle of June 2025. So the contest is very simple. May, June, July 2025 is when you have to enter. It's completely free. It's down on my Discord, linked below, also free. So you go over to the Discord, you post a picture of your metal mini or other suitably old mini with metal parts on it, or a resin version of a metal one, or if you're really unsure, you just tag me in it and I will let you know whether or not we're going to accept it. It also doesn't have to be Games Workshop. Any old metal mini is super duper rad and we want to get them painted, so we're accepting just about anything down there. The whole point is to have some fun, because we're not judging this either. So don't worry if you don't have skills or if you've never painted metal before. The whole idea is to get out there, paint your first metal mini. If you haven't painted one, paint the first one you've painted in decades. If you're an old graybeard like me, whatever the case may be, you just post a before photo and an after photo of your mini and you are in. And what's going to happen is at the end of July, I am going to draw everybody's names out of a hat. And everybody that I draw is going to win some sweet, sweet metal minis, including the original OG Gazgul from my own personal collection, along with Debrestra Makari. So these have been mine forever. I stripped all the paint off of them quite a few years ago and primed them black in preparation for painting them anew. But I think it'd be a lot more fun for one of you guys to get to paint them for the first time. So you could win these guys. You could win an original old school Def Copter with the double wings, or double props. There's also some Chaos Beakies and some regular Beakies and a whole squad of tank buses and just a whole lot of fun stuff. And I am working on getting some other prizes that are a little heavy metal in a different way, if you know what I mean. Anyways, all of that is for our contest down in the Discord below. Now, if you want extra entries, by all means, paint more metal minis, but you're only going to get one entry for painting. If you want to get extra entries, there are multiple ways to do so. You can support the channel by signing up for a YouTube membership right here on the channel, or signing up for our Patreon at the paid level, It's only 5 teeth a month, and basically every month that you do that, May, June, July 2025, it gets you an extra entry on either, or even both if you really wanted to support. The other thing you can do is check out our merch store at theredonesgofasta.com, where you can pick up the really sweet Red Squeak merchandise right here that old Big Mek designed himself, or our new artwork from BenBam, as seen elsewhere on the video. Really, really sweet with the Mad Orc driving the speed buggy right at you, saying "The Red Ones Go Fast" on it. We have these in a zillion different colors, including black with a white writing on it, which is really cool. And then the hoodies are full color. Definitely check those out. We also have some brand new items in the store that I don't even have samples of yet. We've got some cool license plates. So if you live in one of those areas where you don't need a front plate and you've got an old buggy, you can put a really cool front plate on it. We've got one for your speed buggy that says it goes faster, and we've got one for your truck that says that your other buggy is faster because that's a buggy. They're really, really cool. They also feature the artwork from BenBam. We also have a set of orc pins that you can put on your jacket or your army bag or something like that. And we're adding new stuff all the time as we find cool new products. So definitely check that out. Again, every single item you buy, no matter how cheap or how expensive, gets you another entry into the contest. But again, if you want to enter for free, totally easy. Before and after of a metal model, and you are in, and everybody has a chance to win some really cool swag. We're gonna have a lot of prizes on this one. The last contest we did had like first, second, third with a really giant prize, which was fun, but I think it's more fun if more people get to win. So we have lots of really cool stuff. All right, back to the video. All right, we are over here at the workbench looking at some examples of metal and its different forms of corrosion done correctly and incorrectly. So here you have a nice bright shiny silver aluminum, and as you see, I do have chunky white on it. So this looks correct, like the alternator that I showed you earlier in real life. And basically you can dial in your amount of corrosion more or less by, amping up how much you have on there, from basically a pure milky white kind of all over it to just a little stippling. Now, I'm also going to show you the incorrect. There is rust on aluminum, and it doesn't quite look right because the metal is so shiny and so light colored compared to steel. Steel is a much darker color value than aluminum, and that's why this always kind of ends up looking funky. So that is the incorrect. First, here is our iron or our steel. You see that the color value on the metal is much darker, and what we have is that orange brown rust color on it, contrasting very nicely to that steel color. And again, you can go as heavy or as light as you want, and then as fresh or as dark as you want with your varying levels of orange, red, or brown, and that's going to get you the right contrast. And what I've seen a lot of people do, though, is do this. They'll put verdigris on metal, and it doesn't look right. You have the cool tone of the verdigris with the cool tone of the metal, and it just looks all sorts of off, and that's why, because real metal doesn't verdigris. Conversely, your warm orange, copper, or brass does verdigris, and there you can see that tealy oxide color really works fantastic on it and makes it look very realistic. Now, especially with this, you're going to have rain streaking, you're going to have buildups in the little nooks and crannies and crevices, big buildups on bolts and things like that. So definitely, again, as heavy or as light as you want, but that's the kind of buildup that you're going to want to have with the copper or brass. Now, what you don't want to do is put orange rust on it. You have orange rust on a warm tone metal, an orange metal like a copper or brass, and it just starts looking really, really funky. And even though it could look cool artistically, it messes with your brain and you can't figure out why it doesn't look right. That is why, because it doesn't do that in real life. So again, correct, you've got copper metal with teal verdigris, incorrect being the copper metal with the orange rust. Now, again, we are not talking about technique. We are not talking about, a specific brand of paint or other medium to make the effect. We're not even talking about artistic. We're talking about kind of like real life science here. Now, I know what you're saying. We're playing fantasy games or high fantasy games or, sci-fi games. Who knows what color, Wraithbone rusts as? Maybe it rusts purple. Maybe it doesn't rust at all. Who knows? We don't know what, the the ceramite armor of the Space Marines rust as. Maybe it rusts, you know, bright red. Who knows? By all means, if you want to be artistic and come up with your own thing, just go for it. I'm not telling you not to. What I am saying is that if you want to bring that little bit of realism to your models that's going to make people really see it and understand it right away, is to figure out what kind of metal it is that you have painted and then use the correct form of corrosion on it. The aluminum especially, I see done wrong a lot on 40K miniatures, because everybody kind of assumes that, oh, metal rusts and brass has the green corrosion, right? The oxide. They don't realize that there's a difference between ferrous and non-ferrous metals and how they corrode, and that's why it looks funny or looks off. Especially, like I said, when you're doing an aircraft or a spacecraft or something like that, you're not going to have rust all over it. So something to think about when you're working on your model. Look at the metal that it's made of and really think about, what is this made of? Like, is this sword going to be some lightweight aluminum soda pop can, or is this iron? Okay, well, it's iron, it's going to rust. Make that texture, get the little potholes in there. And again, the older it is, the darker it's going to get, almost to a black. So have really dark brown into some brick red into that little bit brighter orange to really sell that effect. With the aluminum, you're going to get that buildup of white. So it's going to get more and more white until the whole thing is covered in it. And again, it's fuzzy. It's just like the metal. It's scratchy, and it's physically changing that surface. So you're going to want to like stipple and get those little bumps and textures on there to really sell it, compared to not having any corrosion on there. And then, you know, again, with the verdigris, you really want to get down into the crevices. It doesn't really happen at the edges the way rust does. It happens kind of backwards when you have those surfaces, which is really cool, and then something that you can use to really sell your effect when you're painting it, especially when you have multiple metals on the same model. You see this a lot with Death Guard. People will have like metal guns on the Death Guard and then have like brass trim, and they'll put the oxides all over the brass trim, and then the rust on the metal looks fantastic. But remember, you can also do white on any of your non-ferrous alloys. Just something to think about. So I hope you learned something from this video. If you've got any other tips or, you know, really exotic metals and how they corrode, by all means, let us know down in the description below. We'll have a great conversation about it, or pop on over to the Discord server if you've got photos to share with the class. Now, I really appreciate everybody watching this video and taking time out of your day to spend with old Big Mek here at the Mek Shop. It means the world to me. Basically, my hobbying is channeled into this channel instead of building my armies and stuff. And so it means a lot when I'm getting you know, great people and great conversations, and I really have made this really awesome community over on the Discord server. There is all sorts of amazing stuff going on already with our heavy metal contest that I'm pretty sure commercialized old Big Mek told you about earlier in the video. All right, that's going to do it for this one. I apologize for the slower rate of videos to my regular viewers. I am working on some really big conversion projects that are very time intensive behind the scenes, which means I can't make as many videos as fast as normal. So I really appreciate if you would share this with a friend, especially a non-orc friend, so that you can get them on board here at The Red Ones Go Faster. All right, I got to get back to work. You got to get back to work working on your minis. And until next time, walk on! Wait, does that mean all the oxidation on this is from just being old? Did some Big Mek didn't actually paint that on there?